Federal Magistrate Judge Bruce Reinhart is giving the Justice Department 1 week to propose redactions to the affidavit which led to the search of President Trump's residence in Mar-a-Lago.
Judge Reinhart seemed to have a very good sense that it is his job as the gatekeeper in this case to perform his function of balancing the interest in the public of accessing these materials against the interest in the government in keeping them secret.
On Thursday, attorneys representing media organizations, including CBS News, asked the judge to make parts of the affidavit behind the search warrant public. The Justice Department pressed for it to be sealed, arguing that its release would undermine an investigation that's still in its early stages.
For the most part, we're not going to see the core of what we're all very interested in, none of which will be good news for former President Trump.
The development comes a little more than a week after the FBI seized classified and top secret information during the search. In other Trump legal woes, the former chief financial officer of the Trump Organization pleaded guilty to not paying taxes on $1.5 million in compensation.
Alan, any message for Donald Trump?
Alan Weisselberg could now be called to testify if a case against the Trump Organization goes to trial. Bradley Blackburn, CBS News, New York.
So here to discuss this a little bit more is Homeland Security and Justice reporter Nicole Sganga. She's in West Palm Beach, Florida, following the latest on the case. And in fact, you were in the courtroom yesterday, and people should know that this is the same judge that actually approved the search by the FBI. So he, knows exactly what's in that affidavit. Did we learn anything else about the possibility of an unsealed affidavit, what might be in it, and anything more about the investigation?
Yeah, well, Anne Marie was in that courtroom yesterday when the judge said, quote, he's not prepared to find that the affidavit should be fully sealed. But obviously that's a little different than saying, well, let the floodgates open. And so Judge Reinhart in there saying that portions could be presumptively unsealed, but whether or not that redacted version turns out to be, his words, not mine, meaningless gibberish, Anne-Marie, he said that's not on him. So if this document comes out looking like Swiss cheese, we're going to be poring over those pages trying to determine what details we can find out about why that FBI, search of Mar-a-Lago was authorized in the first place. But the judge also conceding that there's a real heightened public interest here. And that means two things, Anne-Marie. The first, that, he seemed to suggest the public should have access to whatever information is appropriate, but also that the government and that the people deserve what he calls an untainted investigation. And we did learn a little bit more about that investigation. Firstly, Jay Bratt, counsel for the U.S. government, saying that it is in its very, very early stages. He called it open. He pointed out the fact that this FBI search happened less than 2 weeks ago. Beyond that, we also saw some newly unsealed DOJ documents, including the application for that Mar-a-Lago search warrant, and that revealed 3 more potential federal violations of law. And so the first, willful retention of national defense information, the second, concealment or removal of government documents, and the third, and this one is key, obstruction of a federal investigation. And we're told that that is what was really driving the FBI's immediate search of Mar-a-Lago there, a driving factor, evidence destruction, concerns that the former president potentially could have ripped up records or tried to make them go away. We, of course, know about reports from the National Archives of, Trump administration staffers trying to tape documents back together, reports from the New York Times of documents being flushed down the toilet. So told that concern about evidence destruction was there in the days before the FBI's authorized search.
And so then what happens next? We know that the judge gave the Justice Department some instructions.
Yeah, and we should point out, Anne-Marie, that the judge actually asked the government, hey, how long do you think you need to get me a redacted version of this affidavit? And the government said 1 week. And so that was something that everyone in the courtroom seemed to agree on. The counsel for media interveners there didn't object to that timeline. So come Thursday at noon, right here, we will expect that redacted affidavit from the government. Now, the judge could take one look at that and say, OK, we're done here. Let's release it. or could say, you know what, this is okay, but it's not exactly what I'm looking for. Now, at that point, the federal judge here, Bruce Reinhart, will have his own version of redactions. Now, those will remain under seal while the government has an opportunity to appeal that. So we could be looking at a redacted affidavit potentially in 1 week, or it could be much longer.
We know Donald Trump had tweeted sort of early on that he wanted the affidavit unredacted. He wanted it released. But sometimes the former president gets ahead of his attorneys. Have we gotten a response from Donald Trump or anyone representing him or Republican lawmakers?
Yeah, and the former president still calling for that completely unredacted affidavit. Now, it's interesting, Anne-Marie, I was seated next to one of his attorneys, Christina Bobb, in the courtroom. She was taking copious notes. But what the Trump legal team did not do was file any sort of brief to the docket. They could have filed something suggesting that the former president is asking for this affidavit to be unsealed, could have approached the bench during the proceedings. We heard none of that. So despite the fact the former president has been very loud on this issue, well, his legal team would at least appear so far to have been quiet.
I just want to clarify. The former president tweeted nothing. He is still no longer allowed on Twitter, but he is on his own personal social media platform. I think he uses the same picture, so sometimes I get confused. Yeah. Truth Social, yes. Nicole, thank you very much.
Right. Thank you.